And we should be going on now.
Cool.
Okay, we're good to go.
I see my face over there, which means we're live. Welcome to the Spy Tar Podcast, right? Is that what we're calling it?
The
podcast
Spyshack
where
Podcast.
Spyshack Tarcast, that's right. Where Survivor super fans get together to talk about The Amazing Race, because Survivor's not on, but The Amazing Race sure is. I am Doug. I'm here again, and I'm joined once again by Mark and Saul. Saul, how are you?
I'm doing good. I'm excited to talk about this episode, and I'm excited to speculate about what's going to happen afterwards, but we'll go from there.
Yes, and Mark, how are you doing?
It's a nice and toasty 50 degrees where I'm at right now. So, fantastic.
How rude.
Yeah, and I know what's gonna happen next week, so I'm gonna try to get through this without spoiling anything. So.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw some stuff as well, so we'll save that until the end.
Mm-hmm.
And that way Saul can put, earmuffs on if he wants to.
I already have them on. They're already on.
Cool. Well, I guess just so to set the stage, this is leg 3 of The Amazing Race 33. And we saw at the end of last episode that they would be addressing the big pause that happened, or the suspension of the race, that we kind of knew was happening because this started filming right as the world was shutting down. So we did see that at the end of this. But for the most part, this episode was just an episode of The Amazing Race. They really didn't address any of that until the very end. And I know we kind of threw out a number of possibilities. I don't remember what everybody was hoping for or what everybody predicted. But Mark, what did you think of them just dedicating 1 hour to a leg of the race and then just the very end of it being like, hey, here's the thing that happened?
Yeah, I'm glad that they didn't shave off too much time from the actual leg, because I was expecting there to be like a 10-minute chunk towards the end, and we're just gonna yada yada a lot of the leg. So I'm kind of glad they took only about 2 to 3 minutes just with this. I think they're gonna do a lot more of the explaining at the beginning of the next episode, which makes sense.
Yeah, I was surprised. I didn't know we were getting just 1 hour this time. So
yeah, me too. Yeah. Well, and the thing is, I told you guys in the chat that I didn't even get to watch this live because I go over to my CBS station and the Spurs are playing, and I'm like, why did they do this? Why did they do
additional
this?
Suspense.
Yeah. So I had to wait till 1:30 in the morning for it to record. Watch it later. Earlier
I thought you were about to say you waited until 1:30 in the morning to watch it, and I was like, "Oh, Saul, it's not that serious."
No. No. If I would have known that they were gonna do this, I would have just switched over to Paramount Plus because you can catch the live stream there. But
Yes.
It's only a live stream. You can't rewind or anything like that. So it's as soon as I usually don't tune in right as it starts. I wait for a couple of minutes. I can get some of the commercials out of the way, and then I'll catch up. But if I would have done that, I would have been able to watch it on live.
Well, I think this is a pretty decent leg of the race. I think it had a little bit of everything. I didn't feel like it was especially spectacular, but I didn't feel like it was like a dud or boring either. I don't know if you guys felt similarly or different.
I feel like it, for the most part, you kind of knew who was going to be at the end from the very beginning. From when they were driving the cars, I think you were able to tell right away who was going to be in the back.
Them having to drive themselves, I think, really broadcasts a lot.
Yeah.
And we knew they were going to be doing some of this, so I guess we probably could have predicted that we'd be able to predict. But to sort of kick off this leg starts only very briefly in England. That's where they're setting off from, and we end up in Scotland. The majority, or I guess the entire leg, technically takes place in Scotland. They set off on a train. A very tiny claustrophobic train. Remember when I mentioned the tiny train last week? This almost feels more claustrophobic.
Well, what was her name? Anthony and Spencer. Like, we've been in worse trains. Yeah, I would think so. Yeah.
I was waiting for it. I mean, not to like belittle their experience. That sounds terrifying. But the moment they were getting into a train, I was like, all right, where are they? Where are they? We're gonna get some sort of comment about trains.
Yeah.
And sure enough. But I think it looked like that was their overnight. Like that's where they were staying because they were in beds and everything. That's like all that was in their room.
I wonder if they're like, you know what, guys? There's no pit stop. You're gonna have to spend the night on the train anyway, so check in and just go to the train.
Yeah. I guess I was reading something or listening to something where I don't know if it was Phil or somebody who was just talking about it clarified that technically last week wasn't a non-elimination. It was a continuation. And I didn't realize that those were considered different things.
Yes. Well, you know what? That explains something, though. Because during this leg, I was like, when are Lulu and Lala gonna do their penalty?
Mm-hmm.
And they didn't. So like, what the
no,
heck?
because there technically was no pit stop.
Yeah.
Where they rested. So there's not gonna be a speed bump. So that's the difference between non-elimination pit stops and keep on racings.
Yeah.
And which kind of throws me off. Why not just do a 1 hour premiere and put these together as the 2 hour?
I don't know. I imagine just the appeal of doing a 2 hour premiere. You know, I think it's become almost standard, I think, for the CBS reality family to do these 2 hour premieres. I agree with you. I don't know that it served it best, but I imagine that's probably what it was.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's the same thing, right? The same reason why we didn't get 2 hours this time are probably because they have that 19-month break, but we'll get there. We'll get there.
Yeah, totally. So once they get to Glasgow, they have to find their clue, their path, their direction on the windshield of a car that they were going to be driving for the entirety of the leg, and it was a stick shift car. Either of you drive stick?
Nope.
No.
Me neither. Not once in my life.
But I do know in room number 1 to go on the Amazing Race, learn.
Yeah.
Is learning to drive stick the learning to make fire of the Amazing Race?
I believe so. Yeah.
Pretty much, because pretty much makes all the difference towards the end of the race.
And go ahead.
No. And sometimes during the race as well. As you can see, if you have to do a whole leg, driving yourself, then knowing how to drive stick makes all the difference as well. As you can see with this leg in particular.
And knowing the difference between diesel and regular gas, have we seen in the earlier seasons where there are teams that would
yikes
would mess up their cars by putting regular gas into the diesel car. Yep.
Ooh, that's rough.
Yeah, and I don't know if you know this, but if you mess up your car, they'll get you a replacement, but there's no time. There's no time frame for them to get you a replacement. So you're screwed. It might be a couple of minutes. It might be hours and hours. So
it's all just in real time.
Yep.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yep.
I mean, it seems like the fair way to go about it. So if you're going on Survivor, at least practice making fire. If you're going on Drag Race, learn how to make a simple dress. And if you're going on the Amazing Race, learn how to drive stick. All shows have one of these things, any competition like this. And what is it for the challenge? Learn to do tangrams, review basic math from the 3rd grade.
No, just be comfortable with sleeping with everybody there.
I guess so. Yeah. Well, we get to the roadblock pretty quickly. There was an unaired location. It doesn't sound like it was that exciting. It was like a lakeside town, so we didn't really see it. So because of that, we get to the roadblock pretty quickly. And this one, the only clue they get is who has this one in the bag, which I wouldn't have known what to do with. Although a couple teams figured it out simply because they could hear the bagpipes, and this was a bagpipes
and they're in Scotland
task.
Yeah, and they're in Scotland.
And they're in Scotland. Yeah. So what did you all think of this roadblock?
I didn't mind it. I just thought that they were gonna have to hit a certain note, not just blow into it.
It was easier than I thought it was gonna be. Did you all think the same?
Well, I mean, the process of putting it together, I think that was the main part of it was the main part of the challenge. So
it's a good point.
Some people had some people had it easier than others. Some people just didn't know what to do, and that's where some of the placement changes came from.
I mean, roadblocks are always just one person, right?
Yep.
Because this would have been like the perfect type of. I don't know if there's a place for this on the Amazing Race, maybe a detour, but like this would have been the perfect opportunity to have one person building the bagpipe and the other person has the directions. You know,
Oh,
because they just had the directions sitting right next to them. So as long as you were okay at following directions, like a graphical direction, building IKEA furniture, all that, by yourself, you'd be good. But I think it would have been quite a test to have one person with the directions telling the other person what to do. I think that would have made this task even tougher.
On top of that,
that
you
would
have
have
the
taken
people who,
forever.
yeah. On top of that, you have the people who don't even read the directions, who try to just do it on their own. But
can you imagine Caro and Ray doing that task if one of them had to communicate the directions?
Oh no.
No, no, yeah, and like we said last week, the on the roadblocks, the other person can't help even if they're right there. And
Yeah.
rule 2, I guess, if rule 1 is know how to drive stick. Rule 2 is always read your clues and read everything that you're given completely, because that's going to give you everything you need.
Yeah, makes sense. I mean, no one really struggled with this once they got the bagpipe together. There were maybe a couple teams that looked like they were struggling a bit putting the bagpipe together, maybe just the one, honestly. And it turned out to be beneficial to the struggling and detrimental to the team that opted to help them.
Yeah.
Mark, I have a feeling you were tweeting about this because I saw something you had said somewhere about being devastated for the team that was eliminated, and I have to imagine it ties into this moment at least a little bit.
Absolutely ties into this moment.
So break it down for us.
So Arun and Natalia, they're just nice people, and so at this point they were Natalia was done with the task, so she's like, I'm gonna help my friends. And that's where it all started to fall apart for Arun and Natalia.
Yeah. I wonder if this is going to affect sort of well, no, because gosh, it's so weird having this 19-month break. If this 19-month break hadn't happened, this thought would make more sense. I'm still going to say it. But I wonder if something like this would have sort of affected how people opted to help or not help each other. Because in those first 2 legs, we saw barely anybody actually like helping each other. There were some teams who kind of ended up in the same place a bunch. So they were just sort of like, well, we're not going to hurt each other, but we're not going to like give people clues or give people, the answers, at least that we saw. It sounds like maybe there was some of that happening with the cakes. But this is like the first time we saw somebody kind of go out of their way and take a chance helping another team. And I just have to imagine if people saw that and then saw that team fumble, if they would have collectively said like, okay, helping is bad, even though in previous seasons sometimes it's really beneficial.
Well, I don't know if they ever actually cemented that they were team, like they were helping each other out. It was more just like being a nice person to help them out, right? But like I forgot his name, Oran. He said, it's Arun. I'm not sure how to say his name. Like he said, it's okay to help, but don't stay there and help them out. It's okay to give them a clue or whatever, but don't mess up your own team by staying back behind.
I think it's a good distinction, right? If they had been working on the bagpipe together at the same time and you saw that a team that you liked or thought would be beneficial to socialize with was struggling, that's like a good moment to help. But they were totally done with the task and she stopped to help. And it doesn't seem like she consulted her dad before doing that. Like she just sort of went over there and helped.
But at that point, they were squarely in the lead, so they didn't think too much about if this is gonna like affect our standings or whatever, because they were number 1 out of there. So
yeah, I mean they had a bad leg all around. It wasn't like this moment necessarily.
No,
this certainly didn't help.
No,
especially because the team they helped was Connie and Sam, and Connie and Sam is a team that looked like they were going to be a disaster, but has been really solid the past couple legs.
Yep.
No,
but
I'm
no
sorry.
one really. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say that the thing is that, like her dad said, like I said, don't go out of your way to help them out, but be nice about it. Because when we saw them later on, we saw teams just fly by them. Now, of course, they were inside the store and they were outside, but you would think that they would be like, hey, where y'all going? I don't know how bad they were lost that they were in the store asking for directions almost right off the bat. I'm pretty sure it didn't happen in that short amount of time, but It happens all the time, I guess.
I have to imagine it's a tough thing to figure out, right? Because it's not the type of game where you have to have allies to win, like a game like Survivor or Big Brother, where at points in the game, like you just need to have those connections, even if you don't have them the whole way through. But this game, you don't have to have them. So, like, the difference between I'll help you and
Corrections
we'll
lounge.
help each other and we've got each other's backs feel like much more significant distinctions in the Amazing Race. Is that right? I'm like the new guy.
The only time that we're having an alliance worked and was solid the whole way through was last season with what's that winning team? James and
I forgot. I know you're talking about James Wellington.
Yeah.
The reason that he's actually the reason why Mark and I know each other through one of their Amazing Race. What was it, AfterBuzz or what was it?
It was AfterBuzz.
Yeah, we met each other on their forums, and Mark and I were like, hey, why don't we do something like this?
Will and James, there we go. Okay.
Will and James.
How can I forget him? He was on Top Model. My goodness. Okay.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
Coincidence, or were they both like Top Model guys?
Will was Top Model, and James was on Captured on CW.
Okay, so they were reality TV guys.
Yep.
Gotcha. Nice. Well, we'll see. I have to imagine after the big break, especially given something that one of them said, that there will be a lot of collaboration going forward, but time will tell. It could be the total opposite, where because they're friends, they're willing to just go hard at each other. We'll see. Who knows?
Well, I mean, not only that. Well, I guess you can. I don't know if they were allowed to talk to each other afterwards, or they were told that you cannot talk to each other at all during this time away. I would assume that would be the case, right? Because if they're talking to each other, you can tell like, hey, don't trust that guy, or like when we get back on the race, let's make sure to stick together.
It's kind of hard to avoid, though, isn't it? With all the social media and everything, it's gonna be hard to avoid talking to anybody on the race.
I mean, it's impossible to enforce as long as they're not doing it publicly.
Yeah.
Right, exactly.
They can enforce the publicly part because that's breaking your NDA, like explicitly.
Well, it's Survivor All-Stars. They all pretty much knew who was going to be there for the most part.
I mean, any of those like full veteran, full returnee type seasons, they're talking. So I have to imagine they were talking for this too, and either the show knows and just knows they can't enforce it, or it was a situation where the show was like, this is a really unique situation. So if you gotta talk to each other, talk to each other.
there's gotta be some sort of like a DM situation between some or all the teams. And we'll see how that plays out when we restart the race.
Yep. Well, back to this particular leg, no one seemed to struggle once they got the bagpipes together. And so once that was the case, everybody kind of like flew through that. I was surprised, but pleased, because I didn't necessarily need like bagpipes for a full like 30 minutes.
Let me ask you this: the roadblock was to hold the note through the whole little dance thing that they were doing, right?
It's just routine. Blow and make a sound. That's it.
Well, there was a couple
it's even
times
easier than that with bagpipes, because what you're doing is you're blowing into the bag, which is storing air, and you're pushing the air through. So you don't have to hold a note from your lungs the whole time. You just have to make sure that bag doesn't run out.
Yeah, because there was a couple of teams that you can clearly see that they weren't blowing anymore, and I couldn't tell if the note was still coming out or not. So
yeah, you can play without actively blowing into it. So I think that's probably why it looked a lot easier than maybe it was expecting. Maybe, I don't know who was expecting what, but
very not pretty sounds coming out of that.
Yeah, it didn't seem like they had to like hit a particular note.
No.
Nope.
Or stay on one note.
Nope.
They just needed to hold some sort of semblance of a note.
Yes.
And ultimately everybody gets through it. And we get pretty quickly to the detour. Like there wasn't a whole lot going on between that. A lot of the in-between stuff was just driving drama. So we saw which teams, like you were saying, Saul, which teams were struggling with the driving and would continue to struggle with the driving.
Akbar and
if we didn't see a team, honestly, we just Like if they weren't struggling with the driving, we barely saw them in between the tasks.
Well, when they kept showing Akbar and Sherry struggle, I was like, oh man, because I really like them. So I was like, oh man, no. They're showing them struggle this much for a reason. It was them, and I believe it was Taylor and Isaiah were also struggling, and
Caro and Ray.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh, they got out of their car. They got out of their car.
The whole thing that we were talking about last week about Lulu and Lala, how they were fighting, was pretty much the same thing that happened with them. Because one of them was just like, it's okay, it's whatever. And the other one was like, stop trying to console me, because there's nothing to be sorry about right now because we haven't lost. It's like miscommunication as far as how they I guess think about the way they should communicate with their partner.
I think the two of them have very different ideas of what a positive attitude is.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to be a massive problem for them, because both of them thought they were being positive, but they were going about it different ways, right? She was trying to console and he was trying to like push forward. And for both of them, that was a positive like mindset. And the fact that they couldn't see that for each other.
Mm-hmm. So going back to the,
it's going to go well.
Going back to the roadblock, we have Steve in the chat who said, imagine if they had to use a trombone or a saxophone instead.
Oh my gosh. Hi, Steve.
What's up, Steve?
Oh, we're already talking about
people
you.
To be in the chat, and I wasn't even paying attention to the chat.
We're already talking about you, Doug, by the way.
I told people to tell me I was pretty.
Oh, okay. But
it would be like wildly different if it were a different instrument.
They're like a 30-second delay, I think. So it's sometimes there's a little bit of a between their chat and us acknowledging them.
I'll do better about paying attention.
Well, we have, to be honest, because me actually have been dropping the ball more on getting this out. We really haven't had much people in the chat. But so, Steve,
welcome.
Steve, you're one of the first to arrive as we reboot the podcast. So
yeah, to build it back up, build our chat back up.
Thanks for being here.
Yeah, absolutely. So we do end up getting to the detour here, kilt or rebuilt. I think just based on the titles of these, I think I don't know which one I would have chosen based on the titles, because you don't really know what you're doing until you've chosen, right?
Yes.
So based on that alone,
there's the script. For
like
detours, there are descriptions. Yeah,
but
there's simple descriptions of the task before you get to it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think my head is telling me that I should do kilt because it's singing and dancing, and I think that's something I think I would pick up pretty quickly. But I think my gut would be telling me to do the building one, because it's just like, I think I would have thought it was just a straightforward physical thing, and I think in my everyday life that's not what I would gravitate towards. But on the race, where my head is in like 800 different places, I feel like that's what I would choose. But I'm curious. I saw some head nodding, Saul, or maybe shaking.
I wouldn't be dancing, mainly because of my gut. No. I mean, that's kind of in the line of what I do, is work with wood and stuff like that. So just being rebuilt, it would be like, I'll be.
Don't even need to see the description.
Yeah.
lots of wood for Saul. Yes.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is, even if you choose, like, let's say you choose the wrong one, you can always switch back. But you get the little description. You get a little description of what you're gonna do, what each one is, but you don't get the full
detours.
Well, that's the thing. You don't get the full. You don't get the full thing. Well,
yeah.
it almost paid off.
We'll get there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's a big part of this episode in particular.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. For me, kilt is right in my wheelhouse. So I think that's the one I would have gone with. If I were to go on the race, it would have been with somebody from my musical life. So we would have gone for that for sure.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you both of you have like very clear paths. I would be freaking out on which one to do. My concern would be like learning. I'm bad at learning lyrics to begin with, but learning them in a high pressure situation,
Exactly.
I'm like, I would be so screwed.
I think I just want to see you in a kilt.
I mean, I would happily. I'll wear a kilt for the race. I don't care. It's probably very comfortable.
I mean, he's wearing. I don't know. We don't even know he's wearing pants, but.
Yeah, you don't know what's down here.
Hey. I'm not wearing pants. Why should you?
Exactly. So, just I guess a little bit about each one of these. The singing and dancing was pretty straightforward. I mean, they did have to put on Highland dress, like Mark, you were referencing, like the kilt and all that. I think the challenge here was just learning lyrics for a song that has that's like in a particular dialect from people with pretty heavy accents. And they were pretty particular about the rhythm, as I feel like a lot of the singing challenges tend to be. This one seemed very particular. Like if you were not hitting those beats, they were sending you back. And they were doing it in such an embarrassing way where the guy would like do the whole like record scratch on his little keytar thing. It was like, oh, well, I screwed that up. So I can definitely empathize with the folks who are struggling with that one. And then the rebuilt one was rebuilding a whiskey barrel. So you had to take
right down my alley.
A bit of it apart. I think I got the sense that they were doing like part of a rebuild, right? Like they weren't taking the whole thing apart, obviously.
Yeah, they weren't having to put the planks together. It was just removing the hoops and putting the top back on.
Yeah.
Pretty much. I'm not saying that it was super easy because some people did have some issues with it. But like I was saying, if you are going to change detours, you better do it all right off the bat. Don't wait 30 minutes, 40 minutes to do it, because that's where you're going to get into trouble.
Yeah. So the other thing too with this, because we're gonna have a team that switches detours. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like you don't know where the other detour is until you've chosen to do it. Is that correct?
You see,
like they don't know necessarily how far apart the detour tasks are.
You see addresses for both,
for
detours
both of them?
right on the clue. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
okay.
I'm not sure. I wasn't sure on that.
So we saw a couple people sort of blast through the singing and dancing one. The notable stuff, I think Kim and Penn struggled for like a hot second, which I think was more just like they were going to be fine at it, but there was a moment where Penn described himself as a diva. So of course we're going to see that moment.
Oh yeah, he was fighting with the instructor guy. Yeah.
Yeah.
He didn't tell us there was going to be a 4-measure break. Blah 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 blah.
I was like, oh boy. I actually ended up being more interested in the rebuild one though, because the people who were doing that, surprisingly there was like more coming from that one, but like in a good way, not like bad drama. But you had these teams who sort of showed up, saw the task, like the flight attendants were one of these teams, saw the task and were like, oh no, did we make a mistake? Because this seems like it might be hard. They're surrounded by like big buff dudes repairing barrels, but they were fine. Like once they realized it's all just in the tools.
Yeah, and I think the hardest part was putting that top on and having to put that like seal, or I'm not sure what it was, around the top. I think that's the hardest part of that one.
Yeah.
Looking at the team spread for the detour, I think there might have been like a limited amount of stations probably for rebuild.
See, yeah, that's a big one too, because you'll get to one of the detours and you can't do it, so you have to either wait or go to the next one. And like I said, if you're gonna switch, you better switch quick.
I wish they would tell you that on the show.
Well, they'll tell you that there's sometimes they'll tell you that there's a limited amount of spaces, so it's first come first serve.
Yeah.
So that'd be a nice thing for us to be aware of.
And I think
sometimes they say, sometimes they tell us, sometimes they don't.
Yeah.
Like last week, there was a limited amount of stations for the wall puzzle thingy.
Makes
sense. For the art thingy. Yeah.
Yeah. So
we only got that afterwards.
So what would happen is either, like I said, you'll get there, you'll see all the spaces taken up, and you decide right off the bat, I got to go to the other one, or people will like, well, why risk it? Why risk, especially if you're at the back of the pack? Why risk going to that one if people are going to go to that one most likely? So they're going to go to the other one.
Yeah, for sure. That'd be rough to choose and then not even be able to do the one you chose. I do think if I were to just do one for fun, I think I'm with Steve. I think the rebuild one sounds like it would be a more fun thing to just try, because I've never done anything like it. I've sung and danced. I don't know if I need to try that in my everyday life. But the big event here with the detour is Natalia deciding pretty much for their team that the rebuild task was going to cause them too much trouble. They switched detours and go to the singing and dancing one, which her dad did say he was going to be bad at. He was like very confident that he was not going to be good at it.
That would have been me. Mm-hmm.
And she was great at gassing him up, but I like could somebody have convinced you, Saul? Because he eventually agreed to it. But
well, I think he was there more for her than anything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I think he was more like, we see at the end of the episode where he's just distraught about it because he feels like he failed her. But that's the reason why I'm saying I think he's there more for her than for him to do this race. And if I'm doing that for someone, I'm gonna let them decide what we're gonna do. Especially if like I said, and part of the reason we're doing this is because she's getting married and she's taking off, right? So this is kind of their bonding kind of thing. So no reason to fight.
That's a good point. That does sort of recontextualize it for sure. Because I wasn't really thinking a whole lot about that, and I was just sort of frustrated that they switched because he seemed so confident.
Yeah, and just switching after seeing several teams already gone through your detour test, and that's just not I don't think that's a smart decision, no matter how you cut it.
I wish that we knew how much time. Did they tell us exactly how much time had passed?
No.
I think sometimes it's hard for them to do that because then it gives too much away, right? As far as like how much time is between teams,
especially at the end.
Yeah.
So, what I was gonna say on that one is if you get there and people are telling you it's taking forever, which they can just be lying to you, then I can see maybe why waste my time here. But if no one's telling you that, just because you think it's going to be hard doesn't mean it's going to be hard. So give it a try.
That's true. Again, the flight attendants, I mean, they considered switching before they really dug into it, and they just decided to give it an honest, swing and pulled it off just fine.
Right.
So all the barrel folks, I think once they got to it and saw everybody else kind of getting to it, I think they were pretty good except for Natalia and her dad. It felt so bad.
I'm telling you, that would have been dancing and singing. That would have been me.
I mean, some teams really crush that. I mean, Taylor and Isaiah, no surprise there, right? They're known for doing their dancing video, which we saw again, which I'm not mad about, but like, it's one video. You can only show it so many times.
And I was surprised by Akbar and Sherry. Akbar and Sherry, they look like they were pros.
Yeah. I think all the teams that I guess this makes sense because you're getting to choose, but all the teams that would have been most enthusiastic about doing a task like that seem to have chosen it for the most part, right? Like most of the teams doing the singing and dancing were pretty animated. When I saw Kim and Penn doing it, I was like, well, of course, you're like TikTok dancers. But then everybody else like got pretty into it.
Oh yeah.
Well, anything else about either of these two detour tasks or any of the teams completing or struggling to complete them?
Yeah, but I think most of the standing changes aside from Arun and Natalia came from the driving, I think. I think between the detour and the pit stop, because I see a lot of like where you see some teams get to one of the detours first, and then they all of a sudden they're down there at the bottom, and you're like, what's going on?
That's the time where I wish they would show us more. How did they end up here? Or at least that bad. Sometimes they do show us. They show us like they're struggling, but then all of a sudden they're like way back, and then we didn't get enough time. And I get it; they only have an hour to do it. But we want to be able to see. I want to feel like I know what's going on in the race, even though I'm not there. I want to feel the what is it? I'm not sure what I'm trying to say. I want to kind of feel like I'm there with them, figuring out where they're at. And sometimes they kind of do lose people that way.
You want that tension. Saul wants to be on the edge of his seat.
No, I did. I mean, like I said,
which makes sense, with any of these shows, especially with one that's a race. So
yeah, and like I said, I was like that with Akbar and Sherry. I was like, oh man, they keep showing them struggling, even after they completed their task. I was like, oh man, there's a reason why they could keep showing them.
Yeah. Well, the rest of this leg honestly was just driving to the pit stop. So of course the teams we saw struggling, again, Akbar, Sherry, Caro, Ray, we probably saw a little bit more of them struggling as well. But ultimately it's just the pit stop and then our little epilogue. So we do get our final standings for this leg. Kim and Penn, who crushed this leg, honestly. No surprise that they were first. Ryan and Dusty, these guys, I don't think they've ever been out of the top 2.
I don't think they have. They were either 1 or 2. Or 1, yeah, 1 or 2,
yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yeah, they've been in first or second place for every leg. I don't expect that to change, but like what type of stuff in the race would or does throw teams like this off mark? Because they're one of the teams that we said feels built for this, but I have to imagine there are certain types of tasks or detours or roadblocks that get in their way.
You mean like roadblocks where they have to do some sort of performing and they're judged on that? Probably something like that.
Is that what it's going to be?
It's gonna be that.
That or the luck of the draw with when they get a taxi. I don't know if they're gonna have taxis at the after they come back.
Nope.
But
I don't think they are.
Yeah. So, sometimes it's just the luck of the draw. That too is just getting the wrong person to drive you. This time it's gonna be a little bit different. Like I'm assuming you all already. I mean, you already told me you all read what's gonna happen already. So yeah. It's gonna be up to them to drive themselves. So it's gonna be getting lost.
Are they gonna have to get U-turned to drop out of the top 2?
Probably.
That can happen?
Probably, or like
But somebody has to get ahead of them first.
or just a task that
That's
they're
a good
not
point.
used to it.
That's a
Well,
good
that's
point.
yeah. Or just a task that they are not comfortable with. I don't know them well enough to know what kind of task would make them fall back.
Yeah, I think that right there is maybe the one thing so far, and I don't know how difficult this is with the Amazing Race for them to do, but I think so far, 3 legs in, there are a few teams I feel like I don't know that much about. They're probably at the top of that list for me. Like, I don't feel like I know anything about them outside of their intro package.
Yeah.
I know that one guy was convicted of a crime he didn't commit and that his friend is there, but I don't know anything else about them.
Surprisingly, we didn't hear much about Anthony and Spencer other than that little train comment. Other than that, there's not. At least unless I was just slept through with it. There was not much on them, right? This episode.
Yeah, I think they would be pretty high up on that list for me too, as far as teams I don't really know anything about.
But I wonder if they're coming back.
We'll get to
it.
that. We'll get to it.
We'll get to
So
it.
you already know who's coming back or not.
We know.
Okay.
We know, but the
Okay.
show
We know.
also tells you some stuff, and then there's a bit more information floating out there.
Okay.
So we'll do it in a particular order so people can jump out wherever they feel like jumping out.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're probably the other team I feel like I don't know a whole lot about. They come in 3rd place. They're another team that they had one bad leg. I know it's only been 3, but I think the one bad leg felt like it was an exception for them. We end up getting Connie and Sam then next. This is a team that struggled very early on, but has been fine since. Caro and Ray, again, surprised at how well they're doing. I don't understand how they're placing as high as they are.
I was
Yeah.
surprised.
They
Yeah.
cannot communicate.
Especially after this leg. Like,
Oh my gosh.
how?
I thought once again, okay, so last episode we talked about how, like I mentioned, I was nervous that Ray like walked off the race or that Caro walked off the race because they were doing individual confessionals. We saw individual confessionals again this time, I think, but I thought once again they were going to walk off because they got out of their car and I was like, someone's leaving, like someone's quitting, like this is like, and they're too volatile. Like there's no way that this team could ever make it through a whole race. So I don't know how they're in the top half.
Then again, there were teams that were arguing the whole way and then went on all the way to win the whole freaking
What's
thing.
the one that I do remember? This is a season I did watch. I think it was Perfect Strangers or whatever that season's colloquially called. Wasn't it Scott and Brooke?
Blind date.
Who just were just
the blind date season.
It was a redhead and
was she red?
No. The guy was a tall
okay,
redhead,
yeah. And the blonde.
and the woman was like a shorter woman with dark hair who freaked out at like every task.
I thought she was blonde. But no, yeah,
and
you're
I
right.
think they won, right?
Yeah, they won.
They won.
They won, but they were fighting the whole.
Laura and Tyler, they were pretty well together. The train wreck team you're talking about is Haley and Blair.
Haley and Blair.
Okay.
I don't know if I know that.
They made it to the finals, all right? Or
they
no?
made it to the finals while arguing the whole entire way.
Yeah.
My goodness.
That's who I was thinking about. Yeah.
It's just wild to me that could work. I don't know.
But
I mean, I guess it's good that it does, right? I think it's good that it does because I think if a Ryan and Dusty team is always the most successful team, then like the show wouldn't still last.
I wouldn't mind. I wouldn't mind another blind date season.
Here, Steve just gave us a question. Is there anyone consistently struggling?
Akbar and Sherry.
Yeah.
Akbar and Sherry.
Yeah.
Akbar and Sherry are a married couple who run a school that has sort of an unconventional model where they keep the school open really late into the night. So students have a place to go. But I think that maybe they didn't really know what they were signing up for entirely because they've struggled in a number of ways. And then Lulu and Lala are twins.
Lulu and Lala, yeah.
They just argue like twins. So they've struggled on the race, but I don't know if it's because they communicate poorly. I think they actually communicate exactly how I'd expect twins to go at each other. But I think it's really those two.
They're a lot less messy than the Twinnies, which
I've said it before.
I've never seen the Twinnies seasons.
Watch both of their seasons. Yeah, it's absolute fireworks.
I only know them from Survivor.
And I said it before.
Interacted on Survivor.
In the
watch their seasons, you won't regret it.
Okay.
During the Survivor recap, I said it. I really like Natalie on her own. I cannot stand them both together.
The two of them together.
As much as I like them, I cannot stand them together.
Absolutely not. Oh my goodness.
Well, let's see if Lulu and Lala make the jump to any other CBS shows. Phil seems to be a fan.
Well, I mean, they have the look that shows look for, anyways, right? That appeal to want to bring them on, maybe even the challenge or something. Because MTV is owned by Viacom, right? So at CBS as well.
Yeah.
So that's the reason why they're doing their little interchange of talent.
Yeah, that's why all of those shows are now feeder shows for the challenge.
Right. So I wouldn't be surprised to see either Lulu or Lala in Big Brother as well, or the challenge. So I think both of those shows would be a good fit for them. Yeah,
I think they honestly might have had better starts on those shows than this one.
Yep.
So anything else from this leg? We do ultimately, we've alluded to it a number of times, but Natalia and her dad ultimately are the team that ends up eliminated because they just couldn't recover from the singing and dancing challenge.
I was so sad.
It was
so sad.
You know what it was? I was like already sad that they were being eliminated, but the fact that he was so upset and that she was consoling him, there's something about like an adult child consoling their adult parent that always I'm like, oh no, this is so much sadder. This is so much sadder.
It was.
She was trying so hard to tell him like, you did so good. I'm so proud of you. I'm so glad I did this with you.
This is the first time we get something like this, but for some reason this one hit me more.
Yeah, just because we like these guys so much.
Yeah,
we like these guys so much, and they were doing so well, and they just came off of a win, and to go out like this is just absolutely heartbreaking.
Yeah, I was rooting for him. I really thought that maybe halfway around this leg, I really thought Caro and Ray or Taylor and Isaiah for some reason. But again, Taylor and Isaiah, the dancing husbands, just it's more of a vibe. There's something about their vibe that makes me feel like they're not doing as well as I think they actually are.
Yeah.
And I don't know what it is. So that's just me not being fair, but I thought they were in trouble for some reason.
Well, no, they've been towards the end of the pack every single leg, right? So
yeah. They've been in the bottom. And
it's not like we've seen them arguing. It's not like we've seen them really struggle much. They
have a great dynamic together.
Yeah, they just haven't been able to break the pack.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't think they have that killer drive as much as some of the other teams. They're not going at it as hard as some of the other teams. Is what I'm trying to say.
I think you're right.
And I wish
think that's exactly it.
I wish Natalia had a little bit more of a killer instinct, not to help, but she just seems to be too nice. She seems to be super nice.
Again, that was not the killer decision. The killer decision was the detour switch.
Well,
which, accounting for driving time and everything else. that was the killer decision.
Especially since they were driving themselves, and they also got lost at one point.
Right.
Remember, they like missed an exit, so it was just a really bad leg for them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Steve, I think you have a point. Like it reminds that moment with Natalia and her dad just reminds. I think the reason it hits hard is what Steve's talking about. It reminds you that like eventually the people that took care of you are people that you may have to take care of, which is always like a very real deep thing to sort of be confronted with.
Mm-hmm.
And then for them to be eliminated after it happened is just the worst.
Yeah. I guess
anything else about this before we get into the sort of not technically spoiler stuff, but like spoiler adjacent?
I mean, is
stuff.
it spoiler if it's out there? I mean, like
there's two tiers here. One of them is stuff that was shown on the episode that you may or may not have noticed because it was real brief.
Yeah,
and then the other
you do
thing,
see who's coming back.
I couldn't tell who it was.
You see some folks who are coming back, and I did write them down. So I'll
Right. So is that going to be the first tier or second tier?
That's the first tier because I do know definitively. I don't know where this is sourced from, but I did see who actually comes back and who doesn't. So
I'm ready.
This is okay. So what was shown on the episode? They do their card of 19 months later, which is a wild amount of time. I knew it was long, but for some reason framing it like 19 months made it seem forever.
Yeah, well, that's a big number.
The thing is that remember that that Amazing Race went from two seasons a year to only one, and previously I think one of the previous seasons took like a year and a half before it even came out from when they filmed it. So it's like
that was last season.
Yeah, they took almost a year and a half, and then they again not because they wanted to, but because they had to.
I heard. I think it was Jessica Leese on Rob's network talking about some like confirmed but almost mythical season, like international season of The Amazing Race that was filmed in its entirety and has never aired. And that just sounds like a nightmare. Like that would be the worst case scenario. I would be so devastated if I ended up filming an entire show and then it never made it to air. That would be the worst.
Something must have gone down bad.
Yeah,
I don't know. I mean, maybe it's for the better, but I just that would be so terrible.
I need to go back and listen to their episodes because I haven't listened to their episodes in a while, and she's got to be one of my favorite Amazing Race commentator. Yeah.
She's great just because she has such a knowledge of like she's so well traveled. It's always nice to hear her talk about these places. I've never been to any of them, so I don't know. I never know anything about where they're going. They could be filming it all in the United States and tell me it's somewhere else. And I'd be
I thought that maybe they might do that this season. Like, you know what? Let's finish the next 10 legs in the United States.
Yeah, I think they could have. I think they very well could have.
They did it one year.
Just like. Oh, did they? They did a whole season in the United States.
They did the family season,
the family edition.
Oh, that makes sense. That makes sense. And doesn't Canada and Australia do their seasons entirely in Canada and Australia? Like it's not it's not unprecedented.
Canada has reached out internationally for the past couple seasons.
Okay.
For the first few seasons, they stayed entirely within Canada.
Yeah. Okay. U.S. is too proud, like in a stupid way, right? Like Survivor could have been filming a season in an American territory.
In Nassau.
They didn't
Nassau.
do it.
Australian Survivor, they did it in Australia.
Mm-hmm. It's fine though. It's ultimately fine. Like it's fun to see other places around the world. So I'm not mad that they waited. I mean, for us, it doesn't affect anything. We still get to watch the next episode next week, right? And we will. And we saw a little bit of what that'll look like because after the 19-month jump, they return to the starting line, but they don't return to Scotland. They return to Switzerland. And we see 5 teams. We get an overhead zoomed out view of 5 teams running in, and we do see 5 different teams faces. So here's who the show told us is coming back. Akbar and Sherry are back, which I'm really happy about because knowing they're educators, that could have really, really screwed up their plans, right? So I'm really happy to see them back. Raquel and Kayla, the flight attendants, not really surprised they're back. Ryan and Dusty are back. I'm so happy to see them, considering I know nothing about them. Maybe that's why we haven't seen very much, is because they knew they'd be back. Kim and Penn are back, which is interesting because they talked about how hard it was to leave their kids and make that work. So I guess I'm happy to see them. And then Lulu and Lala are back. Those are the 5 teams we saw.
I'm kind of bummed that Anthony and Spencer are not back. I wanted to know,
Well,
know more about them.
Here's the weird thing, Saul.
Okay.
For a split second at the end of the episode, and Mark and I know exactly what this means, but you don't yet. At the very end of the episode, there's another zoomed out shot for just a second, and there are more than 10 teams. There are more than 10 racers. There are more than 5 teams. There are 7 teams standing in front of Phil. So even though we saw only 5 teams walk in to talk to Phil, when they zoom out, there are 2 more teams. The show doesn't tell you who they are. Mark and I think know who they are.
Phil did say towards the end of the preview that, we're going to bring back some familiar faces. And I think the most obvious thing for you to deduce from that is the most obvious thing that you should guess.
Iron.
But the show doesn't technically tell us. So
they didn't tell you, but they told
you. Point, you could. But I think we'll probably speak freely about what we do know as far as which teams definitively are not back. Because it was more than I expected.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and it was some surprising teams that didn't come back.
Yeah, I agree.
One I knew for sure, and because it's already out there in the social media space. Some of the teams that didn't come back, I was just kind of like, what? What happened there?
Can I guess Saul? That Caro and Ray didn't come back because they broke up or something?
There you go.
Caro and Ray are one of the teams that did not come back, and I have to imagine it's not because they weren't available.
No, I think they broke up.
Nope.
Right?
Yeah,
they did break up. It is confirmed that they're not together. So they were one of the teams that didn't come back. Anthony and Spencer, the train guys, Saul, are not back, which is interesting and kind of a bummer. Although I mean, it's a bummer for any of them not to be able to come back.
Yeah.
I should clarify. It's a bummer that any of them weren't able to come back. But if I'm just talking about like the characters we've gotten to see and the stories we've gotten to see, I don't know if I necessarily need both Ryan and Dusty and Anthony and Spencer. So
okay, that makes sense. They kind of and if they were different seasons, they kind of fill the same kind of trope, I guess, of character.
I think they do.
Yeah, so I get it. Yeah,
they're both like, as far as we've seen, I'm sure they're different people, but as far as we've seen, they're both male pairs who are in their like early 30s or late 20s, who are both known for a international news story. Mm-hmm. Like, I mean, the show hasn't told us anything about them that feels different. So, so yeah, they're not back. And then the last team that isn't back is Connie and Sam, I believe.
That
were not shown.
That
and
threw
are
me
not
off
back.
too. Yeah.
But they're also, at least one of them is an educator as well. So that I kind of wasn't expecting either of the teacher teams to come back. So I guess I'm happy at least one of them got to come back. So then it seems like what we're probably getting is Natalia and her dad and the cops, right?
Yep.
That's
the
what I
only
said.
move that
I did say that last
that
week.
makes sense. You're right. Because so many teams are out.
I think knowing that 4 teams weren't able to come back, I feel a little bit better about it, because I did feel going into it, I was like, they're not going to bring back teams that were eliminated. That's like not fair to the teams that weren't eliminated. And I still don't know if it is, but knowing that 4 teams couldn't come back and they only had 10 racers, like, I get it from a production standpoint. And even though I don't need the cops back, I'm pretty excited that Natalia and her dad get a second chance. I'm very excited for them.
Absolutely.
So I'll call it a win.
Okay, now is that the first level? And there's
that was
more
everything.
People? Oh, oh man, I thought there were more people coming back.
That was everything.
So there's 7 teams total. So we still ended up losing 2 teams additional.
Pretty much.
We still are down 2 teams that should be there.
Okay, so definitely, this is going to be a short season.
Well, I think they've talked about doing more mega legs. Is that a term?
I think
we're going to get more of those continuations.
So. They gotta at least fill that episode quota, and so there's gonna be a few more non-elimination legs than we expect. So probably some more mega legs.
I hope they put them together.
A lot more mega legs.
I hope they put them together. And like Mark said last week, we've gotten used to the 2-hour episodes now on a weekly basis, because, like I said before, not only did we lose a season of Amazing Race every year, they've also shortened the amount of time that they put it on TV by doubling up the episodes, which is why I was surprised that we only got 1 hour this week.
Yeah, the show exists in kind of a weird space, so I never really know how much we're gonna get like on the actual calendar, and then add this to the mix, and it's really sort of a. I'm sure we could look it up. I'm sure it says somewhere how many episodes there are, but
the thing
I
is,
haven't looked.
If they have enough in the budget to buy their own planes, charter these flights for these racers to continue, why not have 2 seasons?
I think they struggle to figure out where to put 1 season. It seems like the fact that it always ends up in this weird not always, but lately has ended up in like a weird in between television season. Indicate that CBS doesn't know where to put it.
It used to be summer and winter. It used
to be Survivor Race.
Yeah.
Just because Race has been dropping viewership in the later seasons, that's why they cut it.
But they're still
1 season per year.
But they're still like they still have the budget for it, so that means they're doing something right. And they're still getting nominated for stuff, so it's not like they're not doing good work.
Yeah, I think it's hard with a network like CBS, where like CBS's shows that aren't performing well are still performing better than shows on smaller networks, shows that are performing best on their network. So it's always like kind of weird, because it's like, yeah, they're still pulling in viewers, they're still clearly giving some budget to this show that goes international, but
Survivor,
I don't know what
Survivor viewership has dwindled compared to what it used to do, but it's also because of the state of streaming and all that. We have so many more options nowadays that, of course, you're not going to get as much as like other stuff, like even like wrestling. Wrestling has really low ratings right now compared to what they used to have back then. But back then, if they would drop, I believe, to like a 5 point something, they were in trouble. Now they're like at 2.93 at the most.
I mean, that's the math that I mean, you're talking about the exact math, right? It's like everything has fewer viewers live. So then you have to figure out what the proportional drop off is. And clearly Survivor's proportional drop off isn't concerning to them.
They're still
Amazing
beating
Races must be.
Despite the drop in ratings for Survivor, they're still beating other networks on that night.
Yeah, they still win their slot. Yeah, I mean, that's the big thing.
Yeah.
Right. But I think with Amazing Race, it's hard to tell, right? Because Amazing Race isn't getting a summer spot. They're not getting a fall or a spring and
they always get put in like weird times, like Sunday night or Friday. Yeah,
that's when I knew we were in trouble for Amazing Races, when they started moving them around. Friday night, Sunday night, Thursday night. It's like, choose a night and stay with it. That's another reason why they lose viewership, is because they move around so much.
But they're still doing it. I mean, I think this sounds weird, but the biggest testament to there being interest is the fact that the show hasn't fully gone off the air. Like it easily, I think Amazing Race easily, and I'm not saying this personally, like what I want or anything, but just based on what we see, I think Amazing Race easily could have been a show that a network would have dropped years ago and just said like, it's run its course,
Right.
But it's a good sign that they're still doing it.
Yep.
So, I don't know.
And this season's been getting a lot of buzz, and a lot of people are there's so much chatter about the show this season. I think that it might behoove them to if it's safe to do it, in the future, to do more seasons within a year.
I mean, it's the reason why they've been getting these influencer seasons, these people with more, like, people that people would know more, try to get people back.
The number of people, I mean, not that it's like dozens of people, but the number of people being more than 0 that have told me they were watching this season specifically because of Kim and Penn. Great. I guess cast more Kims and Penns, like, I know at a certain point it was like, there was maybe some eye rolling over the fact that like more and more YouTubers and social influencers and stuff were ending up on the show. But honestly, at this point,
whatever
maybe
helps.
That's just what they need to do,
Whatever helps.
As long as they make good
when are
TV.
we getting our like celebrity Amazing Race season? Like, it doesn't need to be its own separate show because they kind of already do it. You know what I mean?
And they can pay for their
so
own
like the
flights.
Reality Stars one wasn't a separate show. It was just that season's theme. So give us a celebrity theme season.
And like I said,
it could be a shorter season. We don't care.
They kind of did it once. They just didn't really label it that way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the influencers one was essentially a celebrity season.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. We'll see. I would like to see it.
That was actually one of my favorite seasons in a long time.
It was good.
Mm-hmm.
It was good.
That was a good one. Yeah.
And it's not like it didn't produce iconic teams, right? Like Tyler Oakley was one of the most famous people on that season, and he was really good.
He's on different shows right now.
They were great.
Yeah, he once you saw them, like once you saw Tyler and Corey doing it, they didn't feel like stunt casting anymore. They felt like people who were just doing the race, you know? So so we'll see. But we got to get through this year. I mean, we got to see like what happens with all of this, and like if they're able to or interested in building a season again the same way that they build the rest of this race, right? Because we know a little bit about what they're going to do. I think this could be another moment if you want to jump off, because I think we know a little bit about how they've charted things. But I do believe that warning, I do believe that they are staying in one region of Europe. I think it's pretty much all just Eastern Europe. They completely changed their course.
That's fine.
So,
it's probably the places where they can actually travel to during the time. So yeah. So we'll see how this works out as far as like, I imagine it'll still feel fine. I mean, they're pros at what they do. They built the back half of this season for the circumstances. So this might be a testament to how things could look in the future if we don't get our stuff together. We'll see. How did you? I guess the last thing to really talk about here is, what did you all think of how Phil and production handled having to suspend the race? I guess Phil in general and how it the time that was spent on it in the episode. The thing is that we didn't get to see, because by the time they started the race, it looks like we were already in. I mean, it was February, right? So we were already at least a month or 2 months into the pandemic. So we didn't see people.
It was February.
Yeah.
So it was actually pretty. It
early.
Was pretty early to call.
Well, the thing is that at the big.
But I'm glad they did call it as early as they did.
Yeah, and in the other side of the world, people were already getting sick from this, and like in China.
Oh, absolutely.
So it wasn't.
If we're measuring it against like U.S. Specifically like U.S. shutdowns and stuff, because it's a U.S. company, right?
Mm-hmm.
It was earlier than a lot of places were shutting down. So good on them.
No, I don't mind it. I was shocked that it happened so early, because like I said, you didn't see people walking around with masks, where they didn't even bring it up. Oh, we're being safe, and that's probably why they had to drive themselves around in this particular episode. I don't know.
Maybe.
But yeah, no, I think they did a good job in stopping it before anyone can really get sick. And I'm hoping people who didn't come back they're not coming back because they got sick, or they got sick at the time that they were trying to call them back. I'm hoping everyone's okay.
I get the sense that the show might not really dig too deep into it. I don't know if either of you have seen that they will more than what we saw, but I think with all said and done, I think I'm happy they didn't dwell too much on it, because it has been a couple of years now of us living like this. But Mark, what did you think of them pretty much just blipping it 19 months later? Here we are.
I think that's just what it needed to do. And, I mean, we don't want like a whole entire episode of like them contacting each team and chatting with them and seeing how they're doing, blah, blah, blah. This is not that kind of show. So
plenty of shows have done that and it sucked.
Yeah, I mean, we don't even really see it. It worked. I think it worked for some shows and really didn't work for other shows. And this is one where we don't even see them between legs. Like they pretty much pretend that they don't exist between pit stop and pit start.
Again, they might have shortened that for the end of this episode, and they might go further into detail like at the beginning of the next episode, probably.
Well, because they have to introduce whoever those two teams are. Whoever those two teams are.
I mean, also it's probably it's going to be a non-elimination, right? So, and probably 2 hours.
Oh, probably.
Yeah. So
probably.
No, I'm happy. I'm happy with what we got, and I'm happy where we're at here with this season so far. And I'm glad that
I'm enjoying it.
I'm really curious to see where they go during that kind of situation.
Yep.
What places are open? What places are open are available for them to do this? So I'm more interested in that.
I'm very curious to see if the interactions for roadblocks and detours and stuff feels different in any way, because some shows have been able to get away with, or could have gotten away with, pretending that nothing happened, right? Like Survivor could have pretended nothing happened. They decided to acknowledge that something happened, but they could have pretended nothing changed. Shows like I'm trying to think of a different example. There are some shows that definitely, like Drag Race, they expanded everything. Every set is bigger. They moved everybody further apart. Masked Singer did the same thing. So certain shows made it like feel different. I have to imagine things will feel a little bit different because people aren't going to be all up on each other.
Well, I have a feeling there's
right.
I have a feeling it's going to be like a lot of do your own task kind of things. That kind of, I don't know if you remember in Survivor where they've done it like 2 or 3 times. They suck.
How dare you bring that up?
They suck. But I don't know if that's going to be if it will suck here in the Amazing Race. Because I mean, for the most part, all you really have is judges or people just giving them the stuff to do it on their own, anyways.
Yeah.
So just have someone from production have the stuff ready for them and do what you need to do.
Pretty much.
We'll see. Time will tell. Luckily, we don't have to wait too long because we still have a new episode next week, right? Where we'll pick right back up where we left off, and we'll be here to talk about it. So we'll see you next week. But in the meantime, you can find all of us all over the place. Mark, where can people find you?
I can find me on Twitter at MarcoPolo310. That's Marco Polo with a K.
Cool. Saul, what about you?
At Perspective on Twitter and Instagram, even though I'm not using that one on Instagram as much. And also at Nerds FTC, which I'm actually wearing my shirt right now.
I like that. It looks good.
So you can find my other podcast there, Nerds FTC, on Twitter, Instagram, and on Facebook.
Cool. And if you're looking for me anywhere, you can find me on Twitter at IckyBooley, ICKYBOOLEY. And you can listen to me on all sorts of podcasts talking about all sorts of things. Just go to my Twitter. You'll see them. They're there. All over.
I'm going to talk to you right after this, too, by the way.
Sure. One of those podcasts.
Yeah.
So we will talk to you all later. Steve, thank you for joining us in the chat. Hopefully we'll see some more faces in there next time to tell me how beautiful I am.